much about people telling their own stories as us telling their stories. So we have put together some images and some ideas which we hope will spark people off and will be true to at least some of the ideas that Earthfirst is about. And so the second part of this workshop is going to be very much around the idea that we open it up to stories from people in the room. And we also wanted to read a few stories from other people in other campaigns over the years as well. So it's going to be a mixture of things that we do today. So you're going to get half a puppet show, and the first half. Well, also it's going to be a puppet show that changes wherever it goes. It will change according to the audience and what the interested people are. So see it in that light, and I hope you enjoy what you see. One of the things just wanted to ask you though before we started was like, this is all about stories of ecological direct action, resistance to all kinds of incursions on our natural environment, the places that we live and the places that we enjoy. And I just wondered, you know, do we have a few examples of things that people in the room have been involved in that they could quickly share with us? Right, has anybody been
Campaigns, nuclear power.
Right, and what sort of stuff?
Blockades,
Badger work.
Street theatre, doing camps, police go outside as well. Just trying to sort of browse people which one's taking action. So we're still quite early in our campaign, I think, in terms of stuff coming off. But
I think one of the things about this puppet show we've already seen is that things that happened 30 years ago, or 20 years ago, or 5 years ago come around, and tactics get reused, but also reinvented and improved. And I think that's sort of stuff that we are keen to sort of show people. Anybody else? Any other people? Anybody involved in roads protests? I know there are some people involved in roads protests. You want to tell us a quick little story about a road protest?
Oh, where to start? I've been on hospital.
I didn't see you there.
From the other days, we couldn't street before that. I was at 12 foot down, and then walked up, and then 11, and then 4 weekend streets, and then walked to work, 9 ladies, and then bills to blend, and then.
Well, we'll be touching on some of that stuff today.
I wrote the book.
You wrote the book?
Yeah. When are you going to read it? Yeah, that book.
Yeah.
That book exists only in photocopies.
Yeah.
Any other examples of earth-thirsty type action that people have been involved in?
Climate Camp Kingston for Leaf Road.
Yeah. Well, probably quite a few people in the room have been involved in that.
GM food trials campaign.
Yeah.
We occupied some land, and then we picked all the seeds out of the ground that they planted after we tried to stop them planting.
Right.
And then some of our friends took all the seeds back to Parliament and gave them back, you know.
Nice one. Okay, well, we'll kick in then and do the first bit of the puppet show, and then we're going to, as I say, probably read a few accounts of other actions and things linked to Earthfirst, and then we'd like to invite more stories from the audience, and if anybody wants to come and play with our kit, there's an opportunity to do that, and maybe even if you want to do some drawing, you can go and do some drawing. So we'll just see how that goes. What we're going to do now is we're going to just read a few accounts of other actions by the people who took part in them, stretching across the last 20 years. Will you do yours first?
Okay. This is a bit of a story from Kate's book about Claremont Road. And this is somewhere that was going to be knocked down for a road, and a whole load of people moved in and joined the local people who weren't moving out. And a little bit of a story here. Claremont was a quiet line of houses on the way to nowhere, facing the Central Line tube track, but it was short and compact, and its vigilant residents had managed to keep it nearly intact. They decided to block the road to traffic and occupy the entire space. A few different people speaking here. It started off as just a few individual houses, and then somebody decided at some point that we were going to try and take the whole street. There were loads of people running out in the road and building barricades, and then running back into the houses. And then the police would come along and we'd all laugh at them through the windows. They took down the barricades, but they never caught anyone in the act. They finally got worn down. One day they just couldn't be asked. They'd had it about 4 times a day for over a month, pulling down the barricades in the middle of Claremont Road. It warmed up and we blocked the street to traffic. And from then on there were more and more places for people to sleep. And more people arrived. It was a point where people who hadn't known each other from all different places, with lives that had been so-so, started this amazing life with loads of weird and wonderful things that were not so-so. Either brilliant or awful, but certainly different. One of the first acts of claiming the street involved painting the fronts of the houses with a large linking daisy chain. Then Claremont consciously became the state of the art. Number 68 was designated the art house, decorated throughout, a free gallery for all. But as well as this, inspired improvised sculpture and painting covered the whole street in time. It was a chance for people to be creative. There was space to be as wacky as you wanted, and it wasn't going to get smashed down. Well, not for a while. What was the art like? It was always changing. The street itself was art. Every single house was painted. Every single fucking foot of the road was painted on. The trees were covered with adornments. The practical and the art met in the middle. Cars filled with concrete, with scaff bars going out at all angles, painted all mad colours, with little pennants flying from the end of each scaff bar. Sorry, I've got onto the bit I can't read. But yeah, basically people put furniture out into the street and made living rooms in the middle of the street, which was both a beautiful living room and a statement about being chucked out of the houses. Yeah.
I think Mol's going to read us a bit from Newbury,
Right.
a famous rose protest.
Again from Kate's book, little description. So, sit in a tree in the January cold, without food or water, as often as not, while all those trees are felled around you in a sickening frenzy by the chainsaw gangs. Then at night, stick up Section 6s and squat the land that you saved. Build walkways and platforms by the dim light of head torches, stumble with flasks of strong coffee through land that had been familiar until the chainsaw men turned it horizontal. God, the route was so huge, and they were coming for it all at once. Sometimes I felt we were really mad, like really hardcore. I can't believe we were here in the winter, in snow, in the rain, in the mud, and we managed to carry on and do it every single day. There were loads of people who overdid it a bit. Somehow I managed to get by without collapsing and giving myself a hernia, but I did overdo it for sure and got loads of sleep deprivation. And it was quite a trip, like going round with those bug eyes and my body somewhere behind me, with my head thinking I was really on the case and could do anything while my feet stumbled in the mud. It was a shame that everyone, I mean, it seemed like the thing to do at the time, but everyone got on such a mission about it all. And like we were looking after each other, but we could have looked after each other a bit more. Like we could have been a bit more sensible and more into coziness. I wasn't, I was crap on coziness. Like, I used to go and lie in my untreated tree house with all my clothes on. I spent maybe one night in the communal bender where there was a stove, and that was only because they chopped down all my tree houses.
I'm just going to read another bit which is like 15 years, maybe not even 20 years later, which is from the campaign that's going on in South Lanarkshire in Scotland against open cast coal mining. And I think you'll see the few echoes. This is at Mains Hill, which was the first protest camp, and I'm afraid now is an open cast coal mine. And this is about when the National Eviction Team had just come to visit, and they knew that the eviction was only a few weeks away. In that time, I really learnt on the job. I was learning so fast that every time I picked up a hammer or a saw, I noticed I was getting quicker. I was also getting stronger too. I was working long hours, getting up as it was getting light and working through till dark. There was one week that was particularly tough. It had been raining most of the week and the wind was up too. The communal at the time was a beautiful log cabin structure with pallet walls, but it was pretty cramped for the amount of people. We just bought this new tarp for the roof, but hadn't fixed it down properly yet. So one morning we woke up to have it blowing right off, leaving everything sodden. This after a horrible night's sleep because of the storm and hardly any food because there weren't any vehicles around to go on the skip runs. From that day, everything got better. We fixed the roof, put in a wood burner, and people started building a new kitchen. Then we had a gathering and loads of people came and cooked us 3 meals a day and helped us with the building. Once the storms had blown out, the temperature dropped again and things started to freeze. And not long after, oh, the telephone call. Sorry about this. Just turn it off. I remember people saying it'd be better once things started to freeze because the mud and the rain would go away, but I was still really scared of the winter. It turned out to be true though. You don't get wet in the snow. Oh, for heaven's sake. Keeping warm is easier than keeping dry as long as you have a good fire to warm up next to at the end of the day and plenty of layers and lots of bedding to go to sleep under. We were constantly battling with the rain, keeping ourselves and our structures dry, but once it got cold enough, we seemed to do okay. This was also to do with having done the work to prepare for the cold. The communal was now so cosy. I wouldn't have believed it, but winter in the city is so much more depressing than winter outside. When you live outside, sure, you sleep a little bit more, you have to consciously work to keep warm, but you see the season and see it for what it's for and its beauty. Watch the trees and retreat into themselves. And if you didn't look closely, you'd think everything was dead, but really it's just gone to sleep for a bit. I can't tell you how beautiful those frosty mornings were. And in a tree house it was particularly beautiful. There was space in there for both us and you could almost stand up. And when it got cold, the condensation from us breathing and fucking got really bad, and you had to arrange your head so you didn't get dripped on. Then it got even colder and the condensation started to freeze, so we'd jump out of bed before the sun started to melt the little frozen droplets that would fall on the bed as little jewels if you brushed the tarp before the melting began. Then the snow came and turned the treehouse into a little insulated igloo. Those were my favourite nights. We'd hold each other so tight all through the night, sleeping soundly in each other's body heat. But by that time, we'd made a cosy little treehouse for me too, full of duvets donated by locals when it got really cold. It was the first treehouse I'd worked on, and I loved it, even though it was a bit wonky. Leading up to Christmas, we were working incredibly hard, but I was deliriously happy. I felt so purposeful, so full of determination. I realised I was not just surviving the winter, but thriving in it. The hardest thing was watching the site get smaller. The harvesters were working steadily closer, and as we were concentrating on building, we were doing it less to stop them. We were doing a lot less to stop them. The landscape changed. I used to see the woodland as part of the earth, like rocks or rivers, immovable. After watching the harvester methodically chopping, felling, stripping each tree became mortal, fragile and impermanent. Those machines turned the landscape into something unrecognisable, something dead. I think one of the themes of the 20 years of Earth First is that though that sounds like a defeat in many ways, it sounds like people ending up with the thing that they were trying to protect being destroyed, there's also the story of, like, the roads protests were full of stories like that. But in fact, the roads protests were a success. They did actually stop the roads program. And I think it's a continual part of these stories that the individual little incidents can sometimes feel like a defeat, but actually they're actually on the path to a much bigger victory. We've got 20 minutes left. I just wondered if there's any more stories around the room that anybody would like to tell about actions or things that they've been involved in that are linked to the Earth First way of doing things. So it's looking at me.
Can you watch stories of anything that has actually worked?
Yeah.
I think, about 10 years ago, people started being aware of genetically modified crops and started taking action, and Earth First was at the heart of that process. And one of the things that it established was a really clear line strategy that said that they can't get these crops developed unless they have their research and development sites and unless they have their trial sites, which are part of the government scheme to get them licensed. And so there was a national organising process whereby people identified those areas and divvied them up around the country, and in small groups at night people would go out, decontaminate the area, pull the crops up, and get away again. And they did that week after week, month after month for several years, and in that effect combined with the strong lobbying that was going on and the sort of mainstream campaigning that was in place at the time, meant basically we've not grown GM crops in the UK for decades. They're beginning to come back now, and it's always a constant struggle. You've got to keep being vigilant. But I think that was something that inspired the rest of Europe and the rest of the world, and globally the resistance to GM crops has been incredible, and just fed into processes of both open sabotage and covert sabotage like that. So, yeah, that definitely works.
Anybody else got a story they want to tell us? Go on, there must be something more in this room.
I was at
Yeah.
an anti-quarry campaign at 9 Ladies, and it was a 10-year campaign, and lots of people were involved, you know, and that eventually won, and the space is there, you know, after we made all these defences and put the string in the trees and the holes in the ground and made loads of empty beer cans, etc. and rubbish, and at some points it looked really disgusting and messy, but we tidied up, and now it's as if nothing, and no one had ever been there, you know.
Yeah.
Back to normal, happy days.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a success story.
Nice one. Any more anywhere?
We looked onto the trees in our local park because the council wanted to cut down, and they said, "Oh, this direct action means you're not going to cut these trees down." They wanted to use the word direct action. Did it work?
We, in the course of sort of starting to prepare doing this, we had a few events where we've been doing what we're doing now, collecting people's stories, but it's sometimes just little moments, and there's been a few nice ones. I don't know if you want to say one of those. What about the one about was it Becky and the digger?
There was, someone was saying about her first contact with direct action when she was about 14, and she was out walking home, I think, from school one day, and she passed by this building site place, and there's these big diggers, and there's some people sitting on top of them that clearly aren't the workers. So what are those people doing up there? And she goes, "Oh, what are you doing up there?" "Well, we're stopping them from work because blah." And it's like, "Oh, that looks like a cool thing to do. That looks quite fun. Yeah, come up with you." And so she just climbed up and sat on the diggers with them for a bit and said, "Oh, what's all this about then?" "Yeah, I want to do this." And the house continued to for 20 years, 15 years. Yeah, love at first sight.
Well, there's another nice little story from a friend of ours called Jed, who was very involved in the climate camps, and on one of the climate camps she relates how she pitched her tent and she was really knackered, and so she fell asleep inside the tent, and this was just literally after the site take, so it was like one of the first tents up, so she fell asleep for a couple of hours, woke up, and the whole field had been transformed. There was a complete camp with marquees, toilets. It had all gone up just while she'd been asleep. And that's how well organised we are. So be afraid, those guys out there who are trying to develop horrible things. You got any others? We've got probably about 10 minutes left. With this number of people, it's a bit hard to do anything very directly playing stuff, but if anybody who does want to come down and just at least see what we work with, you're very, very welcome to, and to even play. It's a very, very simple technique, but some beautiful things have been done with it. We pinched it off a group called the Paper Cinema, that you might like to look up. They've done some really beautiful puppet shows with this technique. They're called the Paper Cinema. Yeah, worth looking up on the web. Yeah.
And can people see any more of your work like this?
Well, if you look on the Rising Tide website, there's a puppet show of an action that Rising Tide did last year, blocking a railway track from Merthyr Tydfil to Aberthorpe Power Station, which is play for laughs.